Thank you so much for tuning back into the In Between podcast.
Woohoo.
I'm your host, Matt, and with me always my lovely host, Jenna.
Hi.
And today's a very special episode, an episode that I've been excited to do for quite a while, and I get to interview you.
Me.
Yes, on behalf of a nonprofit called EduBridge that Jenna owns and operates. And before we kind of get into it, tell us what your role is, what EduBridge is, and we'll just dive right into it.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note before I get into that, I am a former classroom teacher.
Yes.
I have a degree in education, actually, in English education. And before owning a business, before working in corporate, even taught in the high school English classroom. And I miss it every day, and Matt knows that.
Every day she's like, I want to go back to the classroom.
He's like, you do?
Really? But you're such a good teacher. That's why. That's just kind of the way you're wired.
Yeah.
You get into it, you know exactly what it takes to be successful and then like execute that. And it can be a writable plan each time.
Yeah.
And that's very much how you operate. Being married to you, very much how I see your brain fire in our marriage and in our business. So it's very planned out, and I got to learn not to be lazy and think that my schedule's already created for me, because a lot of times it is. So just do it.
It's funny. Well, yeah, it's, I think over the past few years, especially being in a business like ours now, that's, multi-million-dollar type company, seeing a lot of business proposals, grants, working with other companies and the type of invoices and contracts they're doing, it really, once you see that and you've stepped out of the classroom, you see what a disconnect it is that the teachers do have when it comes to their access to funding. And I was thinking about it earlier, and in any job, when you go and get hired on somewhere, you negotiate your, your employment contract, if you will.
Your employment offer.
What does your offer look like? Well, normally there's a rate of pay. Normally there's benefits, if you will. And normally there's, like a provision of equipment or provision of tools.
Supplies.
Tools, like, where do I get what I need to work? That's not the case for any teacher out there.
So what is it? So what does that look like for a teacher that's a first year teacher? They get hired on at Broken Arrow or Bixby.
Yeah.
And I need paper. Can I just go down to the office and
you can if your district is fortunate enough to have paper on deck for you. But a lot of districts, especially in Oklahoma, where we rank 49th in the U.S., might be a very rural district. It might be a Title I school, which means it's already low economic. And there's already going to be a lack of supplies. And I say that even in the lower income schools, but that's true for even the larger schools too.
Sure.
And I'm not talking paper. I'm not talking pencils. Those things are obviously necessities. That's not what EduBridge was really created to provide. So initially when I created EduBridge, it was to open up an opportunity for teachers to share their Amazon wish lists, or to also to meet practical needs. Yeah. I don't know if you remember, like last summer, and we've never even talked about this or shared this, but we had a teacher come through that needed urgent assistance and needed her carpet replaced in her house. Yeah. And I remember we just
a total gut job.
Paid for it. Yeah. And it was like, it was going to be a do or die. She was a single mom. And when you're in that position and you're also carrying the load of a teacher and caring for students, that's the last thing you want to be thinking about, our finances. And for me, now working in corporate and also having been on the other side of this as a teacher, I know working in corporate how easy it is to access funds for corporations, how easy it is to I work for a for-profit business. How easy it is to hit the ground running and do sales and, find a way to cover expenses. And it's just not the case in education. It's just not the case. It's very red tape. It's very, you know, I don't know if the word's archaic, but the pay scale's a little archaic. It needs to be a little restructured going into the year 2024. It's very, what the top says is what we're going to follow. And it's a drip, and it impacts our teachers, which impacts retention, which impacts a life cycle of a teacher. When I was in the classroom, the life cycle was about 3 years, which is already pretty unfortunate. And I'd say it's even less today in 2024 post-COVID. And so for me, EduBridge was a foundation that was created to help teachers on demand, to no red tape, no donorschoose.com.
Sure.
No, like, I'm going to start a project and I'm going to campaign for funding. Like, it was a way where teachers could find immediate assistance. So how do we do that, and how is it different? Well, when I created it, I remember helping some teachers last year before EduBridge existed, and me turning around, helping them, and then being like, okay, well, our business is going to help this. So where's the tax write-off?
Yeah.
And there wasn't one.
Yeah. You were like, yeah, they're like, I mean, no, there's no tax write-off.
Yeah.
It was just a gift. And Jenna's like, well, we'd still give the gift time and time again, but that's not the point. Where's the tax write-off?
For me, it wasn't about me and the tax write-off. It was more so, do you understand how many businesses would support our state and local funding if they knew there was a tax write-off attached to it? And that's not what it's not about the tax write-off. It's about, I know there are businesses out there looking for organizations to support. And for me, Oklahoma, the educational system, you need to consider it as an organization that needs supported.
It totally
financially.
Yeah.
Like, at this point. So I took it upon a personal responsibility that I wanted to create an avenue where businesses could pledge funding, receive a tax deductional, write-off, and then, have a foundation provide support to teachers, whether it be like practical support. Like last year we weren't able to fully meet the need, but just an example of someone who's reached out to us. Last year, two teachers in a district, they're married. They had an emergency roof. Their roof had an emergency, and we were contacted to see if we could cover the roof, and it was a very large expense, and I actually wasn't able to cover it, and I was really sad about that, because I was thinking, like, there are so many corporations out there and here in Tulsa that I know that if I could spend more energy on this and really, like, hunker down, I know I could get that roof covered for those teachers.
Yeah,
like
totally.
And so it is evolving, and it's still very new and fresh, but I do see it as a way where, hopefully one day, it sparks some change to incentivize more public, direct funding to the educational system, and not through bond issues or not through tax raises, and
so much of it gets lost in translation.
So much. I mean, it's like, how I equate it is like going to the bank and putting your money in the little tube and seeing it go up. Like, where's it going? Who knows? And for me,
going to the lady, but
the lady over there who's then going to take it and,
she's waving.
For me, I've been on the other side of that. I know what it's like to be a teacher and have the red tape and, and feel like, no matter what I do, I'm still going to have to pay out of pocket for this. And so to go back to your question for the first year teacher, that first year teacher is going to pay for everything. Or they're going to be introduced and walked into a classroom and say, this is everything you have, make something of it that's going to be really motivational and encouraging and help students want to be here. And you're going to be given like 4 white walls and some desks and some like papers. And so we have a lot of teachers that reach out to us for things that are beyond, like I said, supplies. Like I last year supplied air purifiers in a lot of classrooms. Nice. That's a huge need, huge. Like just for general, life and health. A lot of teachers, I had a teacher reach out last year. They got shuffled around. They got forced to go to a new room, and they were told by the district, well, for your students now, instead your new room doesn't have cubbies, use laundry baskets. So go buy 20 laundry baskets for your students and put names on them, and those will be the new cubbies. And it was just so gut-wrenching. Yeah. And so we were able to go buy cubbies for that room. They're going up for this next school year. and for her kids. And like that's what that is. Like it's not the markers, it's not the crayons. I know there are organizations out there. I know there are right. The practicality of like, I need this and it's going to cost me, and I already know my paycheck is very, very low. Also, to put it in perspective, a lot of people don't know is when you are hired on, especially straight out of college, if I graduate, let's say in May with a degree in teaching, and my school year starts in August, and when I sign my contract, my first paycheck's not really going to come till the end of September.
And you've got to get
a long time. That's a really long time. And I'm also only paid monthly. Yeah. And there's just a lot that kind of goes into that of like underpaid, if that, and it's just not sustainable. And there's no wonder why they're leaving.
For sure.
There's a lot of cracks. And so I know that we have talked about that on like, I'm like, hey, I'm always like, I want to go back to the classroom. I want to go back. And I know you and I have always discussed like, okay, I think you do. At one point in time in life, I will go back in some capacity. I don't know if it'll ever be the actual classroom again. It might be on the side of the politics side. It might be on the side of the corporate side of it, and then those type of things. And so, but that's essentially what EduBridge is, and that's what it exists for. And
it's so cool. It's to see that passion just kind of continue to ignite in you, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. A simple like, hey, what is your Amazon wish list post on your Facebook, like blows up with hundreds of comments, hundreds of wish lists that obviously if we had the funding, we'd buy everyone. Everything. You get a wish list, you get a wish, you know what I mean?
That's
everyone.
What I want.
But like going through and assessing those and being able to add help and aid and need where you can, it only grows from there as more people, become a part of it. So what are some like specific programs or resources or things that you can help the actual teacher with outside of just their practical like needs? I'm thinking like, professional development, or like being a previous teacher yourself, you may see some things that maybe it's broken, maybe it's not, but maybe it could be done just slightly different. Is there anything that outside of just basically, do you take care of their practical needs and their like professional needs?
Yeah, that's
a
great question. Actually, we had a teacher come to us last year that was like, this is the curriculum that's given to us.
Right.
And this is what we have to do, but this is what I really want to do. And you just like see them come alive on like, this is what I found. And I have actually got it approved, so we still encourage like, you need to go through your hoops and like submit for approvals when it comes to things like this, but I've got it approved, but it's approved for me to purchase it, is what she said. And so it was left to not for the district to buy it. It was left for her to personally purchase it. And that's what that right
from
there.
From the limited resources.
Right. Right, that they're already given.
There's a lot.
And probably someone who's on the outside looking in and doesn't have a heart really for education like I do would say, well, what's it matter if the district's provided it? Then just teach what they already have in place. But you got to understand that the teachers that are teaching makes them come alive. Like this is their passion, and it's our kids that are their passion. Right. Like I'm so thankful for that. Yeah. But they are thinking about what's going to work best for my students in this year, in this day, in this age, in 2024, in a time of screens, in a time of distraction, in a time of limited focus with our kids. Like they are thinking and they're innovating faster than politicians can keep up. Yeah. And that's what's really, really, really frustrating and hard, is that I don't know a lot of people who are actually going to the table and sitting down with them and saying what's working, what's not. What really can we do? What can we change? How can we pivot? I think there's a lot of doing that behind closed doors at the top level, and just debating to debate. But I don't know when it comes to it, have we sat down and like actually walked with them and walked into their classroom and heard, I have to use laundry baskets, but this is really where I want to put these. Do you think I could do and someone walking and doing that. And I really do think if you saw that type of support and you put that in place, I think you'd see a huge increase in some retention. And I think you would also be challenged to shift what you do put your funding in and what you do put your energy in. Because like I said, a lot of things that we're doing right now, and I've done my research on this, and if I were more integrated in a school setting, I would be more engrossed in these. But the numbers behind of what we're putting funding into, I think it probably is time to do a really shift on what how we put funding into it and what we're putting funding into. Because the hard part about it is that everyone's at the table but a teacher to make the decision.
Right.
And that's just
on their behalf.
That's just really silly.
They don't know what they need.
That's just really silly.
So I was going to ask what challenges and future goals, what major challenges do you face in that?
Yeah.
But that's one of them.
Yeah.
Like the disconnect between the top level decision makers.
Which is understandable within any industry. That's in any industry, that's in any public,
communication's key.
Yeah. Communication is key. And I think rather than like the personal agenda or the political agenda, maybe that is leading the decision making and why we're doing what we're doing, and making it about a party and making it about larger issues than just, hey, let me bring it back to like this. I got a teacher here who's using laundry baskets for her cubbies for her pre-K students in a very wealthy district.
Yeah,
that doesn't sit well with me. Like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so more
where's the money going?
Where is, there should be that. So for me, I've worked on the corporate side. I've worked for others and I've owned my own business. I know what it's like to receive a purchase order on your desk and have to review it and look at funding in our account and have to say, you have to submit.
Now's the time.
You have to submit purchase orders
to me. I have to submit them all the time. I got to buy this camera, this new lens,
I know what that's like to
gear.
review it and I'm talking, of course, about something that's much smaller scale than a state educational system.
Totally.
I'm aware of that. But I do think there is a lack of connection when it comes to maybe the top and all the tentacles that fall, from it. And so it was really interesting when we started EduBridge. I had some teachers from all over, but some specifically in other parts of the state of Oklahoma that were like, I would love to receive that, but by contract and legally, I'm not allowed to receive any contributions.
There was still red tape.
So crazy. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, I'm not allowed to receive gift cards, gifts, Amazon things. It's in my district's contract technically. Everything has to be sent to the board office, and then it's dispersed accordingly among the so it never really would reach it to me personally.
That's
and I was like,
that's like when I worked at the golf course.
What
and they're
is
like,
happening?
Hey, no tips, blah, blah, blah. You got to split them with everyone, blah, blah. And we always did. But then some guy would be like, hey, Matt, thanks so much. I haven't got you in a couple weeks. So give me $100 bill. Yeah. You better believe I slipped that baby. That did not go into the general fund. That was Matt's tip, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to raise awareness on that. I'm saying that ought not be, right? I don't know.
It's hard because there are so many people, I think, out there that are ready to support educators, especially if you have a student going through the school system. But from the corporate side of it, I do believe there is a responsibility and a disconnect when it comes to the opportunity that a corporation could have to play directly into our public education, and the impact
connecting those two,
and connecting the dots. And so that's actually why I named it EduBridge, so that we could bridge boardroom to classroom, and that there would be a direct connection, that we would see more of your big corporations. Like, I have this dream that Quick Trip, I'm just thinking larger local Tulsa corporate, Mathis Brothers. I don't know. That's a Tulsa, Oklahoma City company. But these larger companies that have really great causes and initiatives already, and they already give into these initiatives. I would love to see them helping bridge the gap, long-term wise. And the ultimate goal would be, how can we work together hand in hand with the state and not just go direct to teacher, but have that more, I don't know what the
You're telling the
word
state,
is, but
this is actually what we really need. And it's not just us saying it, it's all of us coming with resources. And this is what, there's such a need for that.
Because I understand the lack of funding, but I do think that we have stopped when it comes to working for where we get our resources. I do think there are other avenues and ways to get the resources we need. And I think one would probably challenge me, well, I'm not in public education anymore and I don't have kids. Why should I be responsible, for that?
Sure.
To be honest with you, it doesn't matter if you are been in education anymore and you don't have kids. Our kids are one day probably going to be our boss.
Yeah.
And they are going to grow up and be running our community and be maybe future president one day and be making serious decisions. And so the investment that it looks like from the other side of it, it goes beyond just I'm a teacher and I have a need in my classroom. It's to increase student engagement. It's to increase retention. It's to get good teachers, to have great teachers come back, to have, and I'm one of them, right? Like I'm a former teacher. I know,
Right.
And so anyways, that's EduBridge, and that's been the focus.
I love it. I mean, you can't meet every need, but you can meet a lot of needs, and like the practical ones, the ones that you can meet, and the quick trip like businesses that you can get to come along, and become partners. And it's something that just expands your footprint in the community.
Yeah.
Like it helps the community philanthropically. Like it helps all of those causes, and that funnels back in. We shouldn't be 49th.
Yeah, for sure.
We shouldn't be 49th out of 50. That's terrible. Yeah. Like I grew up in Michigan and our schools were a whole lot better, but they still weren't great.
Yeah.
But we weren't 49th. Yeah. There's no excuse for that. Like
and for me, I know when I'm like, hey Matt, I want to go back to the classroom. I think when I keep thinking about we're 49th, that's just when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, how do we not be 49?
Yeah.
Like how do we fix this? One thing we've always committed is that our kids are going to go through public education.
Yeah.
Like our kids are in the school system. We're very much going to remain within public education. No knock to private. That's not what I'm saying. But I am a public school girl.
We both went
You're
to
a public school kid. It is the right to education, and that free education, that accessibility is very important to us. And I think both of our lives were impacted in the public education classroom, probably more on my end, my life, probably more of what I needed growing up in a single parent household. Also just, I was an only child. I did not receive a ton of attention that probably you got at home with a 2-parent household and a sibling.
Teachers played a huge part.
Yeah, but teachers played a huge part, and they were very, very shaping in my future and why I went to college and why I made the decision to actually even be interested in education.
All the first adults in your life I ever met when we started dating were all teachers.
Oh my gosh,
professors,
that's so true.
Educators.
Yeah.
And I had been out of school for so long. It was just the world you were ingrained in when we first met.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
I love that EduBridge exists. I love that there's a place for people. So tell us more as we wrap up. Like, how do people follow you? How do people reach out to you if they have an idea or they do have a need? Where do they go with that information?
Yeah, so edubridgefoundation.com. You can check us out online. Facebook, Instagram. I am honestly, the past year, I've not kept up with socials, and I need to get better about that going into the next year.
No shame.
But we've been busy, and we are going into a new school year now. And so we have a ton of teachers lined up that are like, here's my wish list. This is, I've got some that are like, I'm funding it myself right now. And I've got all these things. I've got special ed students coming through. I've got, PE students coming through, and here's all this equipment. And like, all of it matters. Like, it doesn't matter if it's writing or math or PE or art. Like,
as a kid, you take that all for granted.
It's all for granted.
It's all like, it came from somewhere. I don't know. School provided it. Like, it was good. But
one day we're going to wake up and it won't be there.
Yeah.
Like, that's the hard part. And that's what I mean by that reality of like, there's got to be a bridge here that continues to provide that and see that as budget cuts happen, they come for the programs that we need most first. Yeah. And so that's truly, why we exist, why we do that. But you can reach out to us online, Facebook, socials. And if you want to help, there's a donate button, there's a support button. But we're always looking for corporate partnerships and, ways that we can help, our community, even further.
Yeah. And maybe any of our listeners that are listening and you know a business owner or you know someone that, man, their heart would like just gel so well with what Jenna said today. Like they would love to be involved, whatever that is. Visit the website, follow up. We'd love, Jenna, it was such a great conversation. Loved hearing about it.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you in the next episode.
Okay.